Now move to the next section of our discussion. To begin with the fourth session of the day, I would now request the chairpersons to unmute their mic and switch on your camera, starting with Dr. Ajay Arora, Dr. Tushar Kanti Sinha, and Dr. Sabina Narak. I would also like to welcome our moderator for this session, Dr. Shashank Rai Gupta. I kindly ask you to unmute the mic and switch on the camera. Over to the chairperson.
I will quickly introduce Dr. Shashank, who's a very brilliant VR surgeon, does a lot of work in Delhi. But my really congratulations to him for creating the Delhi Retina Forum with his group of friends, Rajiv and a lot of other people. They do a great job. I think DRF has really taken Retina way forward. Of course, VNSI is there, other societies are there, but I appreciate the work that he and his colleagues are doing. Over to you, Shashank. Please introduce the chairpersons and carry on, please.
Thank you very much, sir. I welcome you all on behalf of AIOS for this post-lunch session on trauma, what to do. We have a lineup of 4 talks in this session of 8 minutes each, which will be followed by a discussion. And so you can text your questions to us, we will take up after the talks. On chair today, we have 3 wonderful personalities and top retina surgeons of our country who will guide us in this session. I welcome Dr. Ajay Arora from Noida, Dr. Tushar Sinha from Kolkata, and Dr. Sabina Narak from Chandigarh. To start the session, may I invite Dr. Vedant Shah, a budding retina surgeon from Kolkata, for his talk on blunt trauma with macular edema and iritis. Dr. Vedant, are you there?
Yes, sir. Yes, there, sir. Vedant sir, please unmute yourself, sir. Vedant sir.
Am I audible?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Please go ahead.
And are my slides visible?
Yes, put on slideshow, sir.
Yeah, I'm going to do that. Is it fine?
Yes, sir. Please go ahead.
Thank you so much, AIOS and Dr. Saurav Sinha, for giving me this opportunity to present along with these esteemed panelists and chairpersons that we have today for the afternoon session. My topic is blunt trauma with in a patient with iritis and macular edema. So just let me go through a case presentation that I had a couple of years ago. And this was a 30-year-old male, history of ball while playing cricket. And when he came, movement associated with photophobia, watering, and there was also a decrease in vision, which was associated with some floaters. There was no relevant past history, ocular history, and there was no significant family or social history as well. On examination, the right eye seemed to be absolutely fine. In the left eye, the visual acuity had reduced to 6/60, and the anterior chamber showed presence of cells and flare. No traumatic cataract or no phagodonosis was noted. However, the pressure was a little on a higher side at 26 millimeters of mercury. This is how exactly the picture looked on presentation. When I had an examination, when I did the examination of the fundus, the left eye showed few AVF cells. There was a loss of foveal light reflex on the macula, and the peripheral retina showed few whitish reflex suggestive of commotio. However, no trauma, no tears or breaks were noted in the periphery on scleral indentation.
मैंने मैसेज किया डॉक्टर अतुल धवन का सर.
Sorry.
Okay, I would request people to mute the mic so that Vedant can speak uninterrupted.
Okay, sir. Okay.
Thank you. So this was the picture at presentation where we can see that there is a loss of foveal reflex here.
प्रशांत
And we can also see the presence of
स्पीकर की
the
लिस्ट जो
commotion
है
in the
ये मेरी
periphery.
आज की, तो इनके नंबर मिल सकते हैं क्योंकि ज्वाइन करके फोन करके वो बोलो जो भी
back end please mute everybody. Hello, can you mute back end? Please mute everybody. We don't want any disturbance. Otherwise, Vedant cannot speak and we cannot concentrate on what he's saying. Thank you.
Okay, sir.
So I also went ahead and did an OCT, and I was able to find that there was a loss of the ellipsoid zone here, and presence of intraretinal fluid in the retina. So differential diagnosis of could be an anterior uveitis, though there's a clear history of trauma. The other differential diagnosis could be a presence of a traumatic microhyphema, associated traumatic retinal detachment. Sometimes it could also be branched retinal artery occlusion, white without pressure in the periphery, or the presence of myelinated nerve fiber. But clearly, this was a diagnosis of a traumatic iritis with macular edema. And I proceeded with the management of giving the patient a cycloplegic agent, homotropin twice or thrice a day, steroid agent like a prednisolone acetate or dexamethasone 4 to 6 times a day. It is always better to avoid topical steroids if there is an epithelial defect. Because the pressure was also on the higher side, I decided to start the patient on a beta blocker twice a day. On the third day, the patient felt better, though the visual acuity remained at 624. Though as the inflammation had reduced quite a bit, I had stopped the cycloplegic drops, and I decided to taper the steroids over a period of time and asked him to come back after 2 weeks. He was much better, and at follow-up at 1 month, his OCT seemed to be perfectly fine, and there was no other problem. So moving on to the main topic here, the ocular trauma is one of the major important public health problems with a male to female ratio of 4:1. And it is also another important preventable vision loss across all the age groups, has a devastating impact on both individual and society. Various classifications are seen in cases of injuries, but the most common one, which is used, is the Birmingham Eye Trauma Terminology System. We also have a classification based on open globe injury and closed globe injury. The blunt trauma is what I'm going to speak on, and it refers to closed globe injuries caused basically by contusions. And these usually occur at the site of impact or at a distant site. The modes of injury could be direct blow or an accidental trauma. The mechanisms are usually coup injury or counter coup injury. That could be a direct force impact or a compression force impact. There could be a rebound wave force or an indirect force. And the modes of damages which could result in these problems could be either mechanical tearing or shearing, damage to tissue cells, vascular damage, trophic changes, and delayed complications can also be expected in cases of blunt trauma. Pathophysiology is usually the pushing of the iris diaphragm, which causes the expansion of the peripheral structures outwards. And these transmitted shock waves cause deformation injuries, resulting in stretching and tearing of ocular tissues. In retina, it is mainly because of the shock waves, and which lead to the disruption of photoreceptors and injury to the RPE junction. The photoreceptor processes are more susceptible as they are not suspended by the Muller cells as compared to the remaining neurosensory retina. The whitening of the cell, which we see as commotio, is because of the fragmentation of the photoreceptor outer segments and the intracellular edema of the RPE. It is to be noted that there is no intercellular edema present in blunt trauma. So when a patient presents to you, it is important to do a systemic evaluation to identify that the patient is medically stable. Take an important ocular history as per date, time, the cause of injury, whether the patient was under influence of alcohol or not, and the time of injury in cases of medical legal issues. Complete clinical examination as described here. Sometimes it is also important to do a fundus photo OCT, and in patients where the central defect may be observed, maybe on confrontation fields, visual field, and a multifocal ERG may also be required. OCT serves as an important tool in patients with commotio, and it is seen that the major site of disruption is at the photoreceptor outer segment and the RPE junction. Several OCT findings, including the foveal thickness, have been identified to be the possible predictors of visual outcome. And one such classification is the Ann classification that was based on the cone outer segment and the inner segment and the external limiting membrane, which was classified into 4 grades, and depending on the grades, the outcome was noted, beginning with increase in the reflectivity of the ellipsoid zone in grade 1, loss of reflection in the inner segment, outer segment tips, loss of reflection in the IZ and the ellipsoid zone, and grade 4, which was seen as the loss of reflection in all the layers. So this is how Ann had classified and in AGO. The OCTA is also one of the important tools which help us to identify if there are any microvascular changes. Though significant macrovascular changes have not been identified, but it has also been seen by Montario et al. In his study that an early decrease in vessel density in the superficial and deep capillary plexus, along with decrease in the radial peripapillary capillary plexus, was noted at 1 month, which gradually normalized by 6 months. To summarize the treatment, the empirical management would include a cycloplegic agent, a steroid agent, an IOP lowering agent like a beta blocker. Antibiotics need to be given in patients where there is an epithelial defect or there is a globe rupture. In patients where there is not much inflammation, NSAIDs have also been shown to act wonderfully. The follow-up is usually 3 to 5 days. It's always important to check for the corneal epithelium, the EC reaction, check for the IOP and do a fundus examination. If inflammation is noted to be resolved, the cycloplegic agent can be withheld and the steroids can be tapered over a period of time. However, if there is an unresolution, the steroid agents can be increased according to the need. OCT should be repeated usually after 3 to 4 weeks. And it has been observed that the clinical course in such patients is usually good. Only close observation is required. The retinal whitening resolves spontaneously, usually without any visual compromise in 4 to 6 weeks. However, in some cases where there is permanent visual damage, it can occur if there is a pigment epithelial disruption. Sequelae such as macular hole or RP pigment epithelium mottling may also result in suboptimal visual recovery. Some of the complications we can see moving forward in 2 to 3 months may include traumatic glaucoma, traumatic macular holes, retinal detachment, late traumatic cataract or subluxation, and widespread chorioretinal atrophy. So it is important that while most of the some patients may have reduced visual acuity, most 6% of the patients involved with macular involvement are permanently visually impaired at visual acuity of less than 6/9. And it is equally important that the follow-up continues at least 2 to 3 months after trauma, and to perform gonioscopy looking for any angle recession and to look for any breaks or detachment with indirect ophthalmoscopy at every visit. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Vedant, for a crisp presentation. In the meantime, I ask Dr. Shilpi to please share her screen, and I take this opportunity. Dr. Ajay Arora, would you like to add something to this?
So I'll just ask Vedant, you followed up this case, Vedant, over the years?
Sir, I followed it up for 3 months. I called the patient once every month. I also explained it to him that if there was any increase in the floaters, or if there was associated flashes or floaters which he would see, then he needs to come back immediately.
No, you had some signs on the OCT. Did this patient eventually develop any macular hole?
No, sir.
Okay. So I think, Shashank, let's finish up because there are 4 presentations, which means 32 minutes. And we have only about 38 minutes with us. So
sure, sir.
Yeah, so I don't think we should give adequate time to everybody. And so Vedant, please stay back. We may have some questions for you.
Sure, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Now I invite Dr. Shilpi. She is from Nagpur. She is a ROP specialist, and she will be speaking on blunt trauma with scleral rupture. Dr. Shilpi, please.
Thank you, sir. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, OASN, sir, for this opportunity. So I will be talking on blunt trauma and scleral rupture. So blunt injury is a leading cause of visual loss in young patients. Globe integrity, if managed properly and expectantly, and if managed early, it has better visual prognosis. So coming to the mechanism of injury, I will not go into the detail about pathophysiology. We all are aware about the coup and counter coup mechanism of the injury. Additionally, the globe deformation causes equatorial expansion, leading to various sites of ocular tissue injuries, and our point of concern and discussion today is scleral rupture. So the rupture occurs at the anatomical predisposed sites, that is, the muscle ring where the scleral ring is thinnest, or at the sites of staphylomas. It is also seen in cases post-surgical sites are the potential sites for rupture also. So coming to the evaluation of the patient, the evaluation of the patient is intended to differentiate whether rupture exists, which can be occult or obvious. Detailed history as elicited should be taken. Ocular examination should be detailed, and importantly, try to look beyond the obvious. This is all what you all need to evaluate a patient of trauma in your OPD. Initial visual acuity is prognostic, but remember, visual acuity of 6/6 does not exclude serious eye complications. Also, medico-legally, you should record the vision of the other eye. Orbital wall should be palpated for crepitus or bony deformities, and also the eye injury and the severity. On slit lamp examination, these are the obvious signs of rupture, and these are obvious signs of foreign body. Just to stress here, even if a patient is giving history of blunt trauma, we should look for these signs, as many a times it's a mixed bag. Subconjunctival hemorrhage, circumscribed mass under the conjunctiva, and uveal show. These are the signs of occult rupture. Scleral step sign in many of the cases are helpful. Conjunctival tear should be looked at suspiciously, while deep anterior chamber and posteriorly retracted perio iris are virtually the pathognomic of posterior globe dehiscence. Seidels test is to be done in all the cases of suspected tear. Low IOP means occult globe rupture, but high IOP does not exclude occult rupture. Pupillary reflexes should be noted in all the cases. Important is detailed fundus examination with indirect ophthalmoscopy to look for choroidal detachment, optic nerve avulsion, and vitreous hemorrhage, which are indirect clues of rupture, and also to rule out associated morbidities like retinal detachment. Ocular movements and fields are to be noted in all the cases. I reiterate the importance of examination of contralateral eye for these reasons. So B-scan can help you in picking up large posterior scleral rupture and collapsed globe, which are definitive signs of rupture, while presence of choroidals should be looked at suspiciously. B-scan also picks up associated ocular morbidities. These ancillary investigations should be restricted to rule out foreign body, fracture, or occult scleral rupture. This photo shows the discontinuity in the scleral integrity. Collapsed globe or flat tire sign is pathognomic of rupture. It can also pick up associated conditions like muscle rupture and foreign body. MRI is only needed in cases of suspected optic nerve avulsion. In spite of all the investigations, if you are not sure, do explore. Early repair is done to prevent ominous fibrovascular ingrowth leading to retinal detachment and severe PVR. The aim of the surgery here is to remove the debris and disorganized tissue, avoid excision of uveal tissue as much as possible, and give a watertight closure. During suturing, avoid incarceration of subconjunctival and uveal tissue in the wound. Always identify the posterior extent. Start the closure anteriorly. Dissect episclera from the scleral wound. Identify the exact plane and identify the edges of the laceration. You should avoid the inrolling or the outrolling of the edges. Close in a close as you go manner. If you suspect that there is a laceration underneath the muscle, do not hesitate to disinsert the muscle, repair the tear, and then resuture it. Well, closure is not the end. Intra-better prognosis. Ideal window period is 10 to 14 days. Why not early or why not later? The reasons are enumerated. So please do refer the patient to the VIA surgeon within 7 to 10 days after the repair. So to summarize, don't just assess the eye of a patient. Take a step back and assess the patient as a whole. Beware, visual acuity of 6.6 does not exclude serious eye complications. For medical legal purposes, document all the findings and procedures. Even if you are doing the ancillary investigations like B-scan, CT scan, MRI, and they are not contributing to your diagnosis, but you are strongly suspecting the tear, do explore. Even partial thickness laceration should be sutured. Try to preserve the uveal tissue as far.
We have lost the connection now, Dr. Shilpi, but I think she has completed the talk. Thanks for a very comprehensive talk and finishing well in time. So moving on to the next talk of this session, I now invite Dr. Santosh Agarwal, who is from Aurangabad, Maharashtra and has 25-year experience in the practice. He will be speaking on blunt trauma with angle recession. Dr. Santosh, please.
Thank you, sir, for your kind introduction, and good afternoon to all respected judges. I am going to talk on blunt trauma and angle recession glaucoma. It's not proceeding actually.
Sir, please click on center your window, sir. Click and then please press your arrow, please.
Yes, there is.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Please go ahead, sir.
So, as you know, it's a secondary open angle glaucoma. Blunt trauma can cause early glaucoma or delayed IOP rise. And what is angle recession? It is the separation between longitudinal and circular ciliary muscle fibers. So there are different types of blunt trauma. It may be because of sport injury, most of the time in boxing, road traffic accidents. It may be assault type. It may be because of fall or military combat injuries. So what is the incidence of angle recession or angle recession glaucoma due to blunt trauma? Most of the time, it is around 50 to 60% times you get angle recession after blunt trauma. If it at all there is a hypema, it will be enhanced, that is 85% angle recession. And now the angle recession can cause glaucoma, that is angle recession glaucoma, in around 10 to 15% cases. And most important is your fellow eye can get glaucoma in 50% of cases of ARG, that is angle recession glaucoma. So there must be some underlying predisposing genetic factor for causing the glaucoma in other eye. It may not be angle recession. Now angle recession, if the extent of or degree of angle recession is more, that is more than 180 degree, the incidence will be 6%. If it is more than 240 degree, then the incidence will be still higher. What are the high risk factor for glaucoma? Angle recession more than 180 degree, we have already discussed. Second is hypema, 85% cases you get glaucoma. Then lens displacement, anterior displacement, which causing the pupillary block glaucoma. And also the pigmentation or in the angle is increased, maybe because of inflammation, and also the increased age. So what is the mechanism? Already a previous speaker have depicted it very nicely. So what happened in blunt trauma? There is a sudden anterocostal axial compression, which causes equatorial expansion, and the aqueous is forced laterally, forcefully in the angle, and which causes shearing force or tearing force, and it separates the longitudinal and circular ciliary muscle. That is the weakest point. So the ciliary body, iris root, and the lens is displaced posteriorly. So there is an angle recession. Also, the hypema is caused because of the rupture of the anterociliary vessels. And also there is a damage of trabecular mesher, which causes inflammation and subsequently scarring or hyaline membrane formation, which may lead to early or delayed IOP rise respectively. Now, already we have discussed how to examine a trauma patient. So, slit lamp examination and gonioscopy is the hallmark of this examination. And gonioscopy is deferred for 1 month for the obvious reasons. So, what you can see or you will see in gonioscopy, there is an irregular wide ciliary body band. You should note down the extent of that, so you can come out with the extent or the degree of angle recession. Whether there is a pigmentation hike, is there any hyaline membrane formation, is there any synechia, and also most important is asymmetric depth of the AC in different quadrants, in one eye as well as in both eyes. That you should note down. Then localized antechamber depth, already we have covered that, and whether there is a hypema. And Vossius ring, that is the pigmentation ring on the lens that suggests that the iris is touched the lens, and the associated damage like sphincter tear, which causes the traumatic mydriasis, iris injury, zonular dehiscence, phacodonesis, cataract, and posterior segment injuries like vitreous hemorrhage, retinal detachment, or breaks. All these those findings should be noted down. How will you manage a case of angle recession glaucoma? It is very difficult to control as against other glaucomas. If there is a angle damage degree is more, the response to the treatment will be less. So it will be a resistant glaucoma in many cases. If it is an acute glaucoma after trauma, that may be because of inflammation, so you have to start topical steroids with cycloplegics. IOP may reduce many times because of the ciliary shock, and you can lower IOP with the anti-glaucoma medications also, like beta blocker, alpha agonist, and carbonic anhydrase inhibitors. You should avoid PGA, prostaglandin inhibitors, during inflammatory phase. Avoid miotics because it can increase paradoxically the IOP because of the less uvoscleral outflow. Cycloplegics play an important role during inflammation of the iris. If there is a failure of anti-glaucoma treatment, if there is a pupillary block glaucoma, then cycloplegics has a big role to play. Argon laser trabeculoplasty, it is found ineffective. ND-YAG laser trabeculopuncture, it gives variable response. Trabeculotomy with mitomycin antimetabolites gives maximal. If maximal anti-glaucoma medicine fails, then you should go for glaucoma surgery with antimetabolites. That is very important. Also, glaucoma drainage devices can be utilized along with antimetabolites. It will give excellent result. And cyclodestructive procedures are adopted if the vision is very less. So take-home message is gonioscopy, slit lamp examination, and periodical IOP checkup is very much important throughout life, because IOP can rise from 1 year to 50 years of age or any time in the life. And this type of glaucoma is very difficult to control as compared to other glaucomas. And counseling of patient is very important before noting down all the findings. Thank you very much. Now, sir, just 1 or 2 slides, I think, remaining.
Please go ahead.
So in blunt trauma, many times it is unilateral. So what are the differential diagnoses you should rule out? Is there any steroid use? Is there any IC syndrome, UGS syndrome, keratoco-cavernous fistula, or uveitic glaucoma, lens-induced glaucoma, pigmentary glaucoma, ghost cell glaucoma, and neovascular glaucoma? You should rule out all those things because the management changes. Immediate IOP rises because of inflammation, hypema, and pupillary block. And delayed IOP rises because of scarring and hyaline membrane formation. These are the pictures which depict the angle recession. Now the mechanism of how the blunt trauma causes angle recession and then later on eventually to the glaucoma. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Santosh, for this comprehensive talk again. And for the last talk of this session, may I invite my friend, Dr. Atul Dhawan, who is a prolific retina surgeon, and his main interest is in macular hole surgeries. Dr. Atul Dhawan will be speaking on blunt trauma with no view of fundus. Dr. Atul, please.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you, IIS, for giving me the opportunity to share my experience and knowledge with other people. So today my talk is blunt trauma with no view of the fundus. One second, some problem.
Sir, please use your arrow, sir. Please click on the center and please use the arrow. Click the center. Please.
So today we are going to discuss about blunt trauma with no view. So in this next 8 minutes, we will talk about the terminology, causes of no view, and no view can lead to commercial-retinal, choroidal rupture, retinal tear, retinal detachment, and the macular hole. So before going into the blunt trauma no view, we'll just talk about some terminology of the trauma, blunt trauma. That is, we will take cornea and sclera as the eyeball. Will not include choroid and the retina. The second one is closed globe injury means no full thickness wound in the eyeball. And open globe injury is full thickness wound in the eyeball. That means lamellar separation will take as closed globe injury. Rupture is by the blunt object in which there is an inside out injury due to the higher. Laceration is the sharp object injury in which the mode of injury is outside in. The laceration is two types. One is penetrating and the other one is perforating. In penetrating, only entry wound is there, and in perforating, entry exit both wounds are there. So my topic is blunt trauma no view. After technology, we are going towards causes. There are two causes because of which we cannot see fundus. One is hyphema, the second one is temperature. Now we have to take, if the patient is coming with blunt trauma and hyphema is there, we have to take a proper history. We have to ask whether it was a blunt trauma or the sharp trauma, whether severity of it is like a poke or severe blow to head. If severe blow to head, we have to talk to the neurophysician also. After our information, we have to.
Sorry, sir, I interrupt you, sir. Please speak some loudly, sir. Your audio not good, sir.
Now?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And we have to take serious medical history also, just like bleeding or if patient is taking any treatment drug. So the secondary hemorrhage will occur after 24 to 48 hours. Now we will take patient for the second examination. We have to find out the reason of the hyphema, which is
Dr. Atul, your audio is not clear. Can you use a speaker or an earphone if you have along with you?
Can you listen?
Yeah, now it's clear.
Yes.
Now it's clear, Dr.
Okay. So the reason of the hyphema is rupture of the iris and the ciliary body, and we have to note down the size and the appearance of the hyphema. It can be only few RBCs in the anterior chamber, or it is the anterior chamber is full of the blood. The blood can be red color or it can be a black color. The red color means the oxygen flow is good in the anterior chamber, and the black color means the oxygen flow is bad. One second. Now the management of the hyphema is First is medical management. The other one is the surgical management. In the medical management, because the patient has gone trauma, it's a very gray area, but better is to advise the bed rest with head end elevated. It should be more than 30 degrees. So with the help of the gravity, the blood will go down and the pupillary axis will clear. The second one, we will advise cycloplegic, most commonly 1% atropine daily for the relaxation and the decrease of the inflammation of the iris and the ciliary body. For the same reason, we will advise 1% prednisolone 4 times a day. We can advise 0.5 to 1 milligram per kilogram oral Visalone also. We have to daily examine the patient for the next 5 to 7 days for the IOP, vision and the cornea. If the IOP is uncontrolled, if the vision is decreasing, or if the corneal blood staining is there, we have to take the patient for the surgery. Now the indications of the surgical evacuation of the antechamber is IOP more than 60 for 2 days despite medical treatment. That means if there is no medical treatment, first of all, we have to decrease the IOP with the medical treatment, then we have to go for the surgical management. The second is total hypema more than 5 days with IOP 25. The third one is corneal blood staining, and the fourth one is persistent hypema more than half of the AC more than 7 to 10 days. The second cause is the vitreous hemorrhage. It is because of the damage of the blood vessel in the ciliary body, choroid or the retina. The fundus examination in every case with the vitreous hemorrhage should be done at the first visit, because later the hemorrhage can disperse and we will not able to see the fundus on the later on. And the second reason is it can cause, later it can lead to the rebleeding also. This vitreous hemorrhage can be associated with the retinal tear or the retinal dialysis, and we have to do the indirect ophthalmoscopy, proper indirect ophthalmoscopy with the indentation if no occult globe rupture is there. Now, most important role of ultrasonography is here, that we can find out in the case of vitreous hemorrhage whether the retinal detachment, choroidal detachment, posterior vitreous detachment or occult scleral rupture is present or not. If no, then we will wait for 3 to 4 months. If yes, then we will go for the surgical treatment as soon as possible. Now, what can happen? What can we see after the evacuation of the blood from the vitreous? We can find out the retinal detachment. In this case, the retinal detachment was there. The occult rupture was there on the medial side. This is the left. This is the right eye. Occult rupture was there in the medial side. First of all, we have suture the occult rupture. Then later on, after the 5 days, we have done the lensectomy and the RD surgery. The retina is on in this case. The second one is the retinal break and the dialysis. It's very easy to understand. You can take this as an eyeball. If there is a blunt trauma, there is pressure on the eye and anterior-posterior compression is there, which is causing the compression, which is causing equatorial expansion. This equatorial expansion is causing the traction on the vitreous base and opposite side. So the tear can be there at the vitreous base or the opposite side. So in every case in which blunt trauma is there, we have to look for the HST and the dialysis. And if they are present, we have to go for the retinal laser and cryopexy. The next one is the Berlin's edema. In this photograph, you can see Berlin's edema. This is white Berlin's edema. This is macular hole, and this is choroidal rupture. The next is macular hole. It is because of the equatorial expansion and sudden expansion of the posterior pole caused the macular hole. We have to wait for 2 to 3 months. If persists, we have to go for the macular hole surgery. The next one is the choroidal rupture. It can be direct choroidal rupture or indirect. Direct is near the aura and indirect is at the posterior pole. And we have to look for the NVE formation, CNVM formation. The last one is the occult scleral rupture. We can find out the occult scleral rupture with the help of the ultrasonography. And you can see here in this, vitreous is going towards the one direction, and here occult scleral rupture was there. So the take home message is always take a proper history in all the cases of blunt trauma, rule out any open globe injury with the examination, and ultrasonography is the key investigation here. In any problem, take the VR surgeon help. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Atul. Now we have 2 minutes left with us. Can I now invite our panelists, Dr. Ajay Arora and Dr. Subina Narang, in the discussions? And because of paucity of time, I will ask Dr. Ajay Arora to take first 2 talks and Dr. Subina Narang to take the next 2 talks and give the take-home points, what to do, what to look for, and how to manage it, when to refer. Dr. Ajay, please.
So I think the talks have been very exhaustive, and since we have an audience who may not be pure retina surgeons, so it will be useful for us to have some clear-cut ideas. I think it was said in the first 2 talks that we may have to wait for about 7 to 14 days. I think it's important that we do an ultrasound examination, rule out an associated retinal detachment, and if the detachment is there, we have to intervene early. Shilpi showed us a lot of, give us a lot of data. And I think it's very important that any occult tear, a scleral tear should be identified, should be sutured, and you should look at the telltale signs of occult rupture. Because if you do not treat the occult rupture on time, your intraocular pressure may remain low for a long time, and you can land up in a lot of problems in the long run. I think both the talks were presented well. Vedang did show us a good case, and such a case, I think he did show some loss of RP as well as ipsoid zone in his patient. I think in that particular case, he should have followed up for a long time so that we can make sure that the patient eventually doesn't develop a macular hole. I think for paucity of time, we will not discuss further. I'll ask Subina to discuss the next 2 talks. Thank you.
Dr. Subina, can you please take on the last 2 talks and please add on the points?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. I think the talks have been good. The last 2 talks, one was on angle recession and the other one was on blunt trauma and no view of the fundus. In case of like if there's angle recession, yeah, they said it's kind of, it could be early presentation within a year or it could be delayed presentation, in fact, throughout the life, as they said very well. So the patients do need the proper follow-up is required, because you have to look for these patients could develop glaucoma and then we need to treat this glaucoma. And for the next talk, I think it is no view of fundus. Yes, it was very rightly told that the kind of management of the case and the role of ultrasonography in such cases, yes, it cannot be ruled out. So you have to do ultrasonography when you cannot have a view of the fundus, because if there's retinal detachment, you need to intervene early. I think that was said very well. So I think that's what is important for general ophthalmologists. I don't think so. Because of paucity of time, we cannot go ahead with more things. So I think one thing I wanted to point out for the first talk, I think the prognosticating factors, do we need to do OCT in all the cases? This should be very clear that it is only if the patient is not recovering, we need to prognosticate the patient by doing OCT. Otherwise, these investigations are not required for a plain and simple Berlin's edema.
Thank you, ma'am. I would like to ask one question with Dr. Ajay and Dr. Subina, if you can answer, please. At what point of time in a case of blunt trauma with macular edema would you go for a VEP? At what vision? What is the cutoff vision, and how long would you wait before you go for VEP just to rule out that there is an element of traumatic optic neuropathy?
Subina, go ahead.
Yeah, I would say that there's no cutoff vision as such. Yes, if the patient, because most of the patients would have good vision. In case the vision is poor, I would say if at initial presentation, it's just own kind of standards, which I would say, if it's less than 660, yes, I would think we need to look at it more in greater depth. Otherwise, these patients are known to recover.
So I think, Shashank, if the vision cannot be explained by whatever we see clinically or with the OCT, only then we go for further investigations. If the vision can be explained by whatever we're observing, I don't think VEP is required.
Thanks, sir. Anything else you want to add, Dr. Subina, Dr. Ajay, before we close this session?
Can I, sorry.
Can I add one point? Sorry.
Ajay, Dr. Ajay, one sort of here.
Yeah, sir. Saurabh, how are you?
Now, to end the session, one take-home message for the general ophthalmologist: blunt trauma, no open globe, no corneal tear, nothing. Vitreous hemorrhage only. Ultrasound shows no retinal detachment. At what point would you say go ahead with vitrectomy? After how long? At what vision?
So I normally, remember the patient invariably asks, I have a vitreous hemorrhage, will it get absorbed? I'll say most of the vitreous hemorrhages will absorb if you wait for 5 to 6 months, but that is not what we want to wait for. So I would operate a case of a blunt trauma where I'm not seeing a break, but there may be a break because I'm not able to do a good indirect examination. So my wait period is roughly about 2 to 3 weeks, not more than 4 weeks. I would definitely operate, but I would regularly follow up. At any evidence of a break or a detachment, I would intervene.
Great. That was exactly my point I want to make. 3 to 4 weeks, regular follow-ups, regular ultrasound, and the slightest doubt, go ahead with surgery.
One small thing can I add, Saurabh, here?
Please go ahead, sir. That will be the last comment. We'll stop with
So,
that.
yeah, so I think Shilpi or Vedant, one of them showed that whenever you have I think Shilpi showed whenever you have a scleral rupture, you have to oppose the edges. Some people have a method of actually imbricating the edges of the sclera, which actually, when you have a larger scleral tear, it actually works like almost like a buckle, and that also can be done. So you take wider bites if it is possible, you imbricate, and if you have a larger defect, you may have to put in a scleral graft.
Points well taken, sir. Points well taken. Very well taken.
Saurabh, this Preetham here, just one last point.
Hi, Preetham.
Hello, sir. Dr. Ajay, sir, hello.
Hi.
Just one last point, because I'm in a government hospital and also I'm a part of a lot of, medico-legal committees. When it comes to blunt injury, one has to keep the medico-legal aspect also in mind. So, when we come to the VEP part of it, sometimes it may be good to err on the safer side and do as much as documentation as possible, because these are documented evidence of the vision at the time following trauma in the early phases. So that is one point which I had to make.
No, but Preetham, if the vision is a 660 or something, would you still go for the VEP?
No, sir. It's like I said, the VEP may not alter our course of management, but I am only making the point from the documentation point of view.
No, so if you mean to say that you don't have a VEP, and if you have a documented vision, does it go against medico-legal thing?
I think we'll stop with that.
No, because see, the thing is this is important as a take-home for people. And if we say that VEP is required medico-legally, then it should be done in every case, irrespective of the vision.
I think we leave it at that. The point
It is a discretion, sir. What I meant to say,
stop the session. Samruddhi, stop the session. What are you doing?
No. I think Preetham has a point. Preetham has a point because he's hinting towards any damage to the optic nerve, and I think he has a point. That's why Preetham is saying it, and we have noticed patients with reasonably good vision having an optic nerve injury. That's what I was driving to.
Order.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for all the chairpersons and the speakers for the wonderful session. We'll close it now.
Thank you so much. Thank you for your participation.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you so much.
Subhadip, ma'am.